This was an insane offseason for Michigan football. This program fired its head coach for cause, watched him get arrested, and then somehow still landed one of the most respected coaches in the sport less than 3 weeks later. Sherrone Moore is out, Kyle Whittingham is in, and somehow, Michigan still kept its quarterback. This is the 2026 Michigan Wolverines, and this offseason had more plot twists than the season itself. Sherrone Moore was fired in December after the university said an investigation found he had an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. 2 days later, he was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including home invasion and stalking. He eventually pleaded no contest to 2 misdemeanors and was sentenced to probation. It's one of the messiest coaching exits in modern college football history, and it left Michigan fresh off of a 9-win season, scrambling for a head coach in the middle of the transfer portal window. They hired Kyle Whittingham, who just spent 21 seasons as Utah's head coach and put together a 177-88 record, including an undefeated season and a share of the 2008 national title. He's 66 years old. He had just stepped down from Utah after a contract dispute, and 3 weeks later, he's the head coach at Michigan. Here's why that matters for X's and O's. Whittingham brought his entire offensive infrastructure with him. Jason Beck is now Michigan's offensive coordinator, and his Utah offense in 2025 finished second nationally in rushing yards per game and first in yards per carry. Jay Hill, who ran a top 25 scoring defense at BYU last season, is now Michigan's defensive coordinator. This isn't a patchwork staff. This is Whittingham importing a system that's won for 2 decades. And the fact that he was able to walk into a scandal-plagued building and still keep this roster intact, the single most important headline was whether Bryce Underwood was even going to stay in Ann Arbor. Underwood was the #1 overall recruit in the entire 2025 class, grew up 20 minutes from campus in Belleville, flipped from LSU to Michigan in one of the biggest recruiting coups in recent memory. As a true freshman starter in 2025, he threw for over 2,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. Plus, he had 392 yards and 6 scores on the ground. The tape was a little inconsistent. He had a brilliant, near 78% completion game against Washington, but then also threw 7 interceptions over his finals 5 games. Totally normal true freshman stuff. But when Moore got fired and the program was in chaos, there were real legitimate rumors that Underwood could hit the portal. Whittingham made retaining him priority #1. He met with Underwood immediately after taking the job, before Michigan's bowl game even happened. And in early January, Underwood announced he's staying. That decision alone might be the biggest win of Michigan's entire offseason. Now let's talk about some other personnel, because this transfer portal cycle hit different. Almost 30 players left Michigan this offseason, by far the most since the start of the portal era for this program. And a lot of that is directly tied to coaching change. The headline loss is running back Justice Haynes. Before a season-ending foot injury in October, Haynes was averaging 122 rushing yards per game, the most of any power conference back in the country at the time. He's now at Georgia Tech. Then there's linebacker Cole Sullivan, who multiple Michigan beat writers are calling the single biggest loss of the entire offseason. He had 44 tackles, 2 sacks, and led the team with 3 interceptions as a sophomore. He's now at Oklahoma. And yes, the Wolverines play Oklahoma in week 2, so he'll be on the other sideline in Ann Arbor in September. Adding cornerback Jaden Sanders, corner Elijah Dotson, and safeties TJ Metcalf and Brandon Hillman, and you've got a roster that lost a scary amount of production almost overnight. But Whittingham didn't just sit on his hands. He went and got his guys. The headline addition is Celesi Moa, a 2026 recruit who flipped from Utah's incoming class straight to Michigan. He also brought in defensive end John Henry Daly from Utah. At linebacker, where Michigan got gutted, they added Nathaniel Staling from North Dakota State, who racked up 75 tackles and 3 interceptions at the FCS level, plus BYU transfer Max Alford to try to patch the room. At cornerback, Utah transfer Smith Snowden comes in to soften the loss of Sanders and Dotson. And maybe most importantly for this offense, the Wolverines retained Jordan Marshall, who finished 5th in the Big Ten in rushing yards despite missing time with a shoulder injury. And then added 5-star, the #1 running back in the entire 2026 class, Savion Hitter, early enrolled and already turning heads in spring ball. So you might be thinking, is this roster better or worse than the one that won 9 games last year? And honestly, it depends on the position group. Running back might be deeper. Linebacker is a massive question mark. And the receiver room, now without Morgan, leans heavily on a breakout freshman season from Andrew Marsh. And here's the part that should worry Michigan fans more than any single position battle. The schedule is brutal. Michigan opens with 3 home non-conference games: Western Michigan, Oklahoma, UTEP. That's a manageable start. But the Big Ten slate is where it gets so ugly. They host Iowa, travel to Minnesota, and then they have a stretch that includes Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State on the road, plus UCLA, and the annual Michigan State rivalry game. This isn't a ease the new coach in kind of schedule. This is as hard as it gets. So with all of that, a brand new head coach, a top 5 recruiting staff hire in Jason Beck, a returning star quarterback, but almost 30 roster departures and arguably the toughest schedule in the country, Vegas still has their win total set at 8.5 wins. Vegas is essentially saying new coach, new systems, brutal schedule equals a step back before a step forward. I'll be honest with you, I think that number is a little harsh given what Whittingham did at Utah for 2 decades. But the schedule argument is real. But let me know what you think. Do you think they'll go over or under those 8.5 wins? If you're new here, subscribe because I'll be posting more videos just like this one throughout the summer. Thanks so much for watching.